Welcome to the questions and answers, or Q&Rs, question and responses for the emotional. Now, we're dividing this up into two different sections. One, that the censors of the standard social media will get along, and then the uncensored version, which will be available on our private site. Sorry we have to do that, but some of the information is dangerous. So question 1 from Glory70X. How may I find more about the Demartini that you spoke of? Thanks, Dr. Bergman. God bless. The Demartini breakthrough process is run by Dr. John Demartini, a chiropractor, a brilliant, insightful philosopher. It's a 2-day seminar, but it is amazing. He breaks down the emotional attachment with events of our past, and it's fantastic. Where literally if you have an event in your past that has an emotional attachment to it, that event can run your life. I mean, it can literally alter the course of every action that you have now. And so he takes that emotional component away by having you see those events in the past as what they really are. You know, it's kind of like when he talks about loss, and this was loss and grief. When you have grief, you're only left, if you've dealt with it effectively, you're only left with love and gratitude. So for that moment, and when I mean grief, it could be the loss of a job, the loss of a child, the loss of a relationship, the loss of a spouse, family member, something, anything like that. He breaks it down. You still have that beautiful memory of the event, okay, but you're left with love and gratitude. And it's just a brilliant method. I've gone to, I think, 5 of the weekend seminars, even sent my daughter-in-law over for the Demartini training. I think it's one of the greatest things ever. But look at John Demartini, the Demartini Method, the breakthrough process. It's online. He still does it. It's fantastic. Question 2 from Roar Lion. I like that. Hello, Dr. Bergman. My son is 39 and is experiencing hot flashes. Top of his head burns, comes and goes. Feeling very anxious from anxiety and panic attacks, numerous attacks. Been taking vitamins D3, vitamin C, B12, B6, fish oil. As a teen, he went through this. How can we resolve this? Okay, there's 3 stressors that are going to be involved: physical, chemical, and emotional stress. All have to be addressed. Think of this. We're all sitting on a 3-legged stool, and you can't address the supplements and the vitamins and the nutrients. Beautiful. But there could be an underlying physical stressor. There can also be an absorption issue. Now, when you look at anxiety and panic, depression, anxiety, schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, those are all features of the frontal lobe. Now, the frontal lobe is programmable. And that means the position and motion of the vertebrae can influence that through the cerebellar, or the small brain in the back. The other aspect of this has to do with the gut. Okay, and this is where neurotransmitters are produced. It's called the gut brain, or the enteric brain. Now, you can correct the gut. You can get healthy bacteria, healthy fermented foods. You can have the greatest diet in the world. You can have the most fantastic position and motion of the vertebrae. Those are 2 incredibly good starts to heal the gut, change the position and motion of the vertebrae. That means you got to get digital x-rays, find a chiropractor that's going to do a pre and post x-ray that documents structural and neurologic changes. Then you have to change the sleep patterns and to reprogram that frontal lobe, because this is what happens. It's like if you're just practicing tennis, you're not really holding the racket good because you don't have experience. The more experience you get, you can hold the racket good. Same thing with the brain. If your brain is in a chronic state of stress, those neurons in the brain are going to respond to stress like instantly. So you're going to have that practiced response to the environment. Now, that frontal lobe is programmable. Now, there's certain medical interventions that we can't talk about that can create an inflammatory process, that can negatively affect the meninges, the flow of cerebral spinal fluid. There's a lot of things that can affect that we can't talk about. But just know that if you've been in a chronic state of stress, those neurons in the brain are going to be responding to that way. And so look at the three different factors. The gut, heal the gut. Make sure there's not a leaky gut, because there's certain medications, foods, and things that can cause increased intestinal permeability. Look at the structure to make sure that you're getting good input to that cerebellum, and that controls the frontal lobe. Look at diaphragmatic breathing. That's going to help a lot. Look at changing the sleep patterns. That's going to change. Then you do the cross crawl exercise, walking barefoot in the grass, so you get more stimulus up to the brain. If it's too cold where you are to walk barefoot, then beautiful, swing your arms, okay? But that diaphragmatic breathing is going to be the key. Then when you get all of that, then you do the neurolinguistic programming, the I am method, or I am exercise. And it's literally body posture, volume, intonation, breathing. I'm healthy, I'm dynamic, I'm vibrant, I'm strong, I'm healed. If your son doesn't resonate with the neurolinguistic programming, look at emotional freedom technique. It's a tapping technique, works fantastically well. You can get that off of Mercola.com. If he doesn't resonate with that, eye movement desensitization response, okay, where you're literally thinking thoughts and moving your eyes, it's fantastic to desensitize that area. But by addressing all of those, you're going to be reprogramming that brain, where you're still remember the traumatic incidents of the past, but you're going to be having a good solid solution to rewire that brain. And it's fantastic. Oh, also, look up neurolinguistic programming, because on this, it's orthomolecular psychiatry. Linus Pauling and his partner, I think Dr. Hoffer, they developed certain nutrients. Now, since he's been in a chronic state of stress, he is also going to be mineral deficient. So look at a plant-based mineral supplement, such as sea plants, and those are going to be like one of the best. But you got to get a good mineral supplement. Now, there's a company, radiantgreens.com. It's Dr. Tony. He has a fantastic mineral supplement that also has a probiotic in it. And I think his site is radiantgreens.com. Excellent, excellent supplements there. And he will get better. Question 3 from Melba Bonnet 8112. How do I get rid of mind chatter? I have brain trauma after serving 26 years in the military from combat, suffering tinnitus and PTSD. I do meditation, focus good positive thoughts, affirmations, follow motivation speakers. I'm very organic, clean, healthy, exercise. I do have faith. However, my issue is too much chatter that doesn't allow me to stay focused. It's affecting my life. Love your channel. Been following you for the past 10 years on all topics. Peace and love, my friend. Brother, peace and love. Okay. Yeah, you're going to love this. Okay. When you're talking about tinnitus, military combat, everything, that can actually jar the brain and give it trauma. And that can lead to altered brain function. So the tinnitus means that you're exposed to some type of concussive force, more than likely, that can damage the hearing. So all of that is physical, chemical, and emotional stress. The organic diet, exercise, and attempting to reprogram the brain is going to be ideal. We actually have to look at the brain itself. Now, there's a couple of different things. Now, if you can, get to a corrective chiropractor that understands and practices a neurologic-based chiropractic, because this is really interesting. And I'll see this with a lot of different patients who have had brain trauma or physical trauma that is affecting the emotional component. You have to check both halves of the brain. And there's the Carrick Institute in Georgia that is amazing. You may be able to find a neurologic-based chiropractor that practices that method. But what they're going to do, they're going to see what half of the brain is firing correctly or incorrectly. There's also a number of tests that we do at our clinics. But literally, the inside part of this eye and the outside part of this eye govern this hemisphere. The opposite, or contralateral, the medial aspect of this, the lateral aspect of this. So we're going to check for pupillary dilation to see what part of the brain is firing correctly and what isn't. And then we'll literally adjust the extremities on one side, typically the low firing side, depending on where the lesion is or the altered brain function is. And then you can start to see that recover. So knowing that you have had possible physical trauma, we have to get that neuroplasticity, which is that brain regenerating neurons. So we have to look at the input into the brain. Then we have to look at how the brain is functioning, because you're describing that mind chatter, okay, is frontal lobe issues, but it can also be from a chronic state of a stimulus due to some type of trauma. Think of like when you're driving your engine, if you have a squeaky flywheel, okay, you're going to hear that while the motor's running. That's the same kind of thing if there's been damage to the brain. And the brain can recover. It's amazing. But you got to heal the gut, which you're doing really good stuff. I mean, you're doing the organic and everything else. But think of this. If I'm standing on your foot because there's some underlying physical stressor, blood supply to the gut's going to be suppressed. So you could be taking in the most beautiful nutrients ever, but if you're in a physically stressed state, you can't get it. And this is where neurotransmitters are produced. So let's look at the structure. We're building the body from the ground up. Look at the structure, get the nervous system checked. We use heart rate variability in thermography to see the autonomic function. The heart rate variability is amazing. It'll tell you if you're in your fight or flight state, and then healing the gut, figuring out what part of the brain, okay, is not functioning correctly. And then we may give you asymmetrical exercises, which means you're working one side, not the other side, or you're doing movements in a different fashion. Look at our pelvic health video, because we have some exercises where you're just swinging your legs and tapping something. And that may be diagnostic as well as therapeutic. You may see that it's going to be hard to keep a good, even rhythm. And that indicates that part of that brain isn't functioning correctly. And then by doing those exercises, by doing the deep breathing, by making sure the gut has good nerve supply to produce those neurotransmitters, then you can actually have that brain regenerate, and that will suppress the chatter, suppress everything. But you've got to look at the problem, okay, the input, and the nutrition. So it's really the physical, chemical, emotional stress. Then you've got to reprogram the sleep patterns. So you're getting deep sleep. And a good practice is when you get this mind chatter, do diaphragmatic breathing, but nasal diaphragmatic breathing. So that tummy is moving like a bellows. And that's going to vasodilate, bronchodilate. It opens up the blood vessels and the air tubes. And this also gets oxygen to the brain, having a calming effect on the system. But you will recover, brother. You will recover. Absolutely. Question 4 from Peanut Man. Question: I understand that a change in perception is key. However, suffer some severe stress and anxiety due to spinal stenosis and subluxations, which you have treated me for, but the pain is gnawing away horrendously, and I'm not progressing. I need help. Thanks. Okay, I wish I knew who you were, because you can do specific things. A lot of people will come to see me for like a week or just a few days so we can assess the problem. So on the assessment, if you've been to one of our clinics, we know we've taken static x-rays and stress x-rays. So we know if there is a problem, what can be corrected. Now, stenosis just means narrowing. Now, when you rehydrate those discs, you reposition and get the curves back and eliminate the lateral bends, you correct the stenosis. But that's only part of it. So you need to get the pre and post x-rays to document the structural changes. Then in the nutrition report that we give every patient, we talk about changing the sleep patterns, changing the circadian rhythms. So that's the hardest exercise ever, because you're changing habit patterns that could have been in there for half a century. So look at our sleep restriction therapy. Look at the neurolinguistic programming, the I am exercise. That works fantastically well. Do the diaphragmatic breathing so you're oxygenating the system. And then understand that pain is an alarm. It's telling you that there's some kind of problem. So if you have, say, stenosis in the low back, man, that means that pelvis is going to be unstable. So sitting with a foam piece to restore the lumbar curve, stabilizing that pelvis with a trochanter support, doing the leg swinging exercise for balance and memory and brain function, and also to heal the knees so that you can change your gait. Because if you're not addressing the biomechanics of the feet, the knees, the pelvis, then that means your gait is going to be off when you walk. And if that's off, you're talking that pelvis houses half of the parasympathetic nervous system. So this is the resting, digesting, and repairing is going to be off. So you have to look at the entire structure, and you have to look at the sleep patterns, the nutrients that you're taking in and making sure they're absorbing. Live blood cell analysis is going to be fantastic because you get to see if the blood is holding is separate, if they're holding oxygen. If you're in a stress state and have low stomach acid, the blood cells start to overlap or stack on top of one another, worst yet. And that means that it can't hold oxygen, and that little 1 kilo brain burns 90% of the body's oxygen. So breathing is going to be vitally important. And then hydration, and realize that those discs have a horrible blood supply. They get their nutrients through movement. So all the things that we talk about, and this, I tell people, I said, I'm a chiropractor, but also a Jewish mother. I'm going to tell you, are you doing the exercises, honey? And you got to do them. You got to do them, because when you're doing everything, you're addressing the physical, chemical, and emotional stressors. Then your body, which is designed for health, will achieve that health. You're made in the image likeness of God. You will recover, because that's the natural state. I mean, think of this. If I drop this pen 100 times out of 100, how many times will it fall up? None, because we have certain laws that we got to live within. And that's the same thing. The natural state of a human body is healthy. Any symptom is there. It's an alarm telling you that there's a problem. And in addressing the alarm is not the problem. The stenosis is only there because of altered mechanics. Correct the mechanics, and then the stenosis is eliminated. Restore the curves, rehydrate the discs, reverse the arthritis, and you're literally rebuilding the body healthy, because every one of those cells in your bones, in your discs, in your ligaments, in your stomach, in your skin, they're always regenerating. And if your spine is off, okay, it's regenerating in an off position. You reposition that, then the spine regenerates in a healthy configuration. You will get better. I mean, contact me however you can, and we'll go over the x-rays and go over all of the things that we need to do to maintain our health. But they are patient specific, so I've got to look at your films. Question 5 from David Roger Thompson, 1954. My wife is having a nervous breakdown. How do you help with this? She's practically OCD, in my opinion. The littlest thing triggers her. I'm wondering if there's something she is missing supplement-wise. One of the things that our population is exposed to now that no generation has ever been exposed to is the endocrine disruptors, things that are like hormones but not hormones. Now, this is in glues, plastic, pesticides, but it's also in makeups, perfumes, room deodorizers, like the Febreze they put on carpets and stuff. All of these things, they're like hormones but not hormones, but it causes the body to go into a complete change in hormonal balances. And that's going to be the key. So when women go through having their body getting ready every 28 days to produce a kid, and then their system changes into what's called premenopause, perimenopause, postmenopause, in that hormonal shift, normally the body can handle it. And your adrenal glands are also the pharmacy of the body. However, fat, it becomes an estrogen-producing organ. The ovaries and uterus, okay, if those have been damaged in the past, like with ovarian cysts or uterine fibroids, that all indicates, because the body forms those cysts and fibroids based on a toxic environment. So we've got to get her body healthy. Now, there's a lot of doctors out there that would say, hey, get her some bioidentical hormones. You can get bioidentical hormonal implants underneath the skin, which will help in people that have had chronic injury or illness. And by chronic injury or illness, I mean chronic antibiotic use, chronic steroid use, chronic toxicity exposure, like packaged foods or processed foods or glyphosate exposure. I mean, all of these things are like hormones, but not hormones. And then if you're in a stress state, you have less nutrients or less blood supply to the gut. So you have less absorption of those nutrients. So we've got to break it down: physical, chemical, and emotional stress. Physical, we've got to look at the entire structure. And one clue that you can talk to her is when you look at her feet, her big toe may be leaning towards the other ones. And that indicates pelvic instability. And the pelvis houses half of that parasympathetic nervous system. Resting, digesting, and repairing will not be good on her. So we've got to go in there and stabilize the pelvis. But pelvis is never damaged unless you fall on your butt on a slippery sidewalk or something. But pelvises are usually secondary to a problem with the low back, lumbar, or cervical spine. So for sure, we've got to look at the entire structure. And seeing that foot distortion, that gives you a clue that the body is not functioning correctly. Then on the x-rays, we may see a leaky gut because the gut is called the gut brain or the enteric brain. So we've got to look at that gut and then look at her sleep patterns. We know she's not sleeping good. So changing those sleep patterns are going to be huge. Eliminating the toxic environmental exposure that she has. So no packaged foods, no processed foods. Juicing and blending is going to help. But just know that her body and brain are connected. If you have a structural deviation, that has abnormal stimulus to the brain. If you have poor digestion, that has poor stimulus or poor neurotransmitter production. If you can't sleep, your body can't regenerate and you get in that fight or flight state. And all of these things can be corrected, but start at the basics. Physical stress, digital x-rays, stress x-rays. Chemical stress, poor sleep patterns, poor absorption of nutrients or poor taking in of nutrients, or toxic environmental influences. There's a lot of medical procedures that are chemical stressors that we can't talk about. And then emotional stress has to do with reprogramming of the brain. And this is going to be neurolinguistic programming that we teach all of our patients, eye movement desensitization response, emotional freedom technique, or go to seminars such as the Demartini breakthrough process, which is amazing. But she will get better. God bless you, man. It's hard to find good girls. So you got to take care of her. Now, if your question wasn't answered on this, it's because the topic is, the answer would be censored, and we already have a lot of problems with dealing with the governance board of the social media. So please go to the Dr. BVIP site, our other sites, and then this way we can answer it with freedom of speech. And the sites, I'm doing the best I can to keep this social media at bay so we can still have our channels. So if a question wasn't answered, go on the Dr. BVIP site and we will be able to get to it there. God bless you all. Thank you.